Hello, hello. Wow. It has happened. Tonight, it looks like I'm by myself. And I've been wondering when the time comes that this could potentially happen. And of course, what is tonight? Adolescents. I'm sure a lot of you have turned in this evening to talk about those teenage years that we deal with in dogs. And I am by no means an expert in this field, so I'm not going to move forward. I'm hoping one of the others is going to jump in here, but until then, I'm just going to go with it and roll and say, welcome to the Pet Pro Educator this evening. And I'm glad to see we have some viewers on. If you are watching for the first time, welcome. If you have been here before, thanks for checking in again. And if it is your first time, hi, Sydney. This is where Sydney did go, and she is a ball of fun. Sydney, do you want to come on and talk about your experiences? Because I have been doing those this coming month. So if you want to join me, shoot me a PM right now, and I'll get you in. But, we do have Christy.
Yay! Hi.
Hi, I'm
like, my ear button. I barely just walked through the door. I'm like, hi, dogs. How are you? Time for live stream.
Yeah. So
get my earbud
in. Good. Well, I held down my own for the first couple of minutes by myself. So
what was that?
I said I held down the fort by myself for the first few minutes. So.
Oh, goodness. But we're live, right?
We are. Yes.
I was
just doing our intros. Sydney is watching, and we know how much she likes the behavior aspect. So, I am going to turn the floor over to you because you are the queen of this while my cat walks all over the place here. He's going to come in and say hello like he
he's so
makes
cute.
his appearance. So can you I watched last week's, but do you want to recap last week's really quick and then jump into this week?
Yeah, sure.
Because that's the transition and the flow from puppy to adolescent and that age and
Yep. So last week we talked about how puppies are usually considered birth to 6 months.
Okay.
Even though I know our owners tend to think like, oh, he's still a puppy, but adolescence is usually considered 6 months and up, so that 6 month mark is usually about when it switches. Every dog is going to be different breeds mature at different rates, but it's a pretty good guideline. But last week we talked about how for puppies, it's all about what they're learning far more than what it is about what we're doing and what we're trimming or, how close we get their nails or what tools we're teaching them about. It's more about what's going on in their head. Lori's here.
Oh, hello.
Hey.
Yay.
Can you see me?
No. Oh, Mindy's here.
Mindy's
in the
well,
comments.
Yeah.
In the comments. Hi, Mindy. But last week we talked about the puppies and that it's all about how we help them learn that this is safe and learn to trust us and learn that the process isn't scary so that they can have a 15-year future of feeling like this is okay to do. And to talk to our owners about it. Talking to our owners about the expectations for puppies and what they, this individual puppy might grow up to be, especially with our mixed breeds, like what kind of coat we suspect this puppy has, things like that.
Yeah.
So that's the nutshell of what we talked about last week.
All right. So we got into the 6 month. And so now we take from the 6 month to roughly.
I think most people consider it like 6 months to like a year and a half or 2. And I think that's kind of that adolescent phase. Again, it's going to vary, different breeds. I'll tell you what, my border collies, in my experience with my own personal dogs, they mature at 5. Like they don't reach their adult stride until they're about 5. They're high energy cuckoo heads, and they can be super well behaved, but they don't hit their adult abilities like later. But that adolescent phase, about 6 months to a year and a half, 2. It kind of depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, and probably again the size of the dog, the breed of the dog, the parent, the owners of the dog, and how quick they're.
Yeah, well, and I think too, how much they work on stuff. Because a lot of what we see are impulse control issues. Like young dogs are just impulsive.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we see with adolescent dogs, the teenagers, like they're impulsive. And, it doesn't mean that they can't be super laser focused,
Right.
I mean, a 1-year-old terrier staring at a wood at a wood pile, wondering if a chipmunk's there. They could stare there all day. They could be laser focused on it, but they're impulsive and easily frustrated. There are a lot of things about adolescents that they're not broken puppies, but they're not adults either. And we sometimes treat them like they're broken puppies.
Yeah. So let me ask you, and I don't know if this is kind of not in part of it, but kind of in this intro for this evening, I did a little research throughout the day, and I know, I like my research.
I love research.
So, adolescents, they're going through a lot of hormonal changes. And that is that 6 months to whatever that top off adult age is, that's where all their brain growth really is, and that structure and the organization is starting to fire and connect and come together. So what should we, as groomers or pet care specialists or bathers or anybody who's watching, what should we is there something we can know a little more about that? Do you know?
So I try to stay in my lane and not get too medical.
Yeah.
But I think that there are a lot of things that, we have to remember that they're not fully grown yet, even if they're at full height. Like they're still going through growth spurts. Sometimes they're filling out in the chest, like their shoulders are starting to puff out, and they're starting, certainly like a really lanky looking puppy could fill out, so they're still growing. And there are a lot of things that go on with growing. There are a lot of weird, quirky things that happen during adolescence. As an adolescent myself, who's still 18, you think about like how clumsy. I don't know if maybe it's just me, but as an adolescent, I was super clumsy. Like I think that they're still forming, and they're we're asking them to stand for a long time, but standing takes practice. Standing is hard work. Yeah, it takes focus and practice. Yeah. Mindy mentioned that it's important to not get them fixed yet and let them go through some hormonal changes. And there's some really good science on that. Yeah.
I just wondering why, because coming from a different region and different states, they kind of, I think it's all coming across the board now.
Right.
But the having people wait until they're 11, 12 months old before having them altered and such to give them those hormones and testosterone or whatever you want to call it these days.
Yeah. Well, so there were some interesting things about that like back in 2000, when I got my last border collie, I was working as a vet tech, and we were discussing it because already then the sport people, because I wanted to get into flyball with her, the sport people were kind of saying like, let's let them grow up into adulthood because it's better on their joints. And even then it was sort of like, well, I don't know, is that true? But there's some really interesting research about it now, because there are more people who waited. Because for a long time, it was either, if you had an intact animal, it was either owned by a breeder or owned by the riffraff, and there was nothing in between. And, and now we have a lot more, sample size of people who are responsible dog owners who waited until their dog was mature. But you know what? I think we also vilify intact animals. They are not more likely to be aggressive. That's not part of it. and yeah,
No, I do notice. I'm not sure if everyone feels this way, but I noticed that dogs who have been fixed between 4 to 8 weeks are a lot harder to work with and to get them accustomed with grooming than not. I'm not sure. Does that fall
you
into
mean
play?
pediatric spay, the 4 to 8 week?
Yes, I feel like
Really?
they take a long time to mature. And then, but once they mature, they're great. But I feel like they take a while to mature. And I don't know. I've always wondered if that has something to do with it or not. It doesn't happen often, but every dog that I have that's on the table, that's a puppy that's been fixed to 4 weeks, it's always a little bit longer for them to kind of get the hang of things.
I don't know. That's interesting. But I wonder if like that pediatric spay, that like super, super early spay and neuter is usually because they're in the shelter.
Right.
So I wonder if that has a little bit to do with, being in a shelter environment, like be involved with rescue, and maybe because last week we were talking about how if the mama is stressed before she whelps, that affects the puppies too.
True.
So that because puppies are being formed, so a stressed mother can add some problems for puppies too. So I wonder, I don't know, because I don't think many breeders are going like pediatric spay. I think it's really involved with rescue.
I was gonna say
that's interesting though.
It's never a breeder. It's always a rescue puppy. I've only seen one breeder who had them spayed at 6 weeks, and they came in 3 weeks ago. And I was shocked at you. I'm like, 6 weeks? Holy cow!
Huh?
Wow, what breed?
A golden doodle.
Oh,
yeah.
As we all kind of go.
Yeah, we're like,
okay.
Yeah.
They just do whatever they want. There's no science there. They're just like, oh, hey.
Well, I have all of my girls are rescues and from South, and they were pediatric spays. I have found their longevity. They have, my dogs seem to have pretty good longevity. 15, 16 years old, and they're you guys all know they're littles.
Yeah.
Not any health problems or anything. So, but they've stayed small. Yeah. So the development has been different. But we're not talking about puppies, we're talking about adolescents.
Yes.
Well, so Mindy just mentioned something here in the comments that I didn't know, but a stressed mom can actually cause a type of mange in the puppies.
Yes, that I learned.
I didn't know that.
Wow,
that's interesting.
I never heard that.
Yeah. But I mean, it makes sense because if you're really, really stressed and they don't have an immune system of their own yet, and they're born and, So because we are talking about adolescents, we can toss that back in here again. One of the problems that I see coming up is that a lot of the time people are getting their dogs spayed and neutered right in the second fear imprint stage. So we talked about it last week with the baby puppies, that like 7 to 8 weeks, but adolescents go through another fear imprint stage at 7 to 8 months. And that's often right about the time where you're running a little bit late on getting spayed and neutered for 6 months old. And so sometimes they're getting this really stressful situation happening right during that critical time. And it's not like you can't recover from it, but just to be mindful of it. And often that's when we're getting the unprepared owners bringing their dog in matted for their first groom, right? 7 to 8 months. So it's something that when I talk to puppy owners, I'm like, write it on your calendar, 7 to 8 months old, like write some of these things down so that you're thinking about it. Like, oh, hey, in August, I should probably kind of make sure that he's not being terrified by anything, and be extra aware that they can go through this really spooky phase. And that's probably not the best time to decide to, put them in scary situations.
Right.
Scary situations are going to happen, I mean, that's, that ends up being like puppy's first thunderstorm or puppy's first fireworks, but often it ends up being right when people are doing the spay neuter or a first real grooming.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
yeah, Sydney just said she's seen the opposite with the osteosarcoma.
Yep.
Lack of hormones. Who
Well,
knows?
so
Yeah, it's
one of
interesting.
the things that they talk about for spay and neuter when they're super young or when they're older, the reason why they're trying to avoid doing it when they're at about like 6 months old to a year old is because I guess when you spay and neuter, some of the hormones that tell the body to stop growing the bones aren't there anymore. So another body system takes that on. Not being very techie about it, not playing vet.
No, but it's interesting.
But so what happened is like a lot of the sport people were saying that the long bones aren't formed yet. So all of those little, like imagine like the little tiny bones in your wrist, those are already formed, but the long bones aren't. So it was creating a different angle on things like the hock.
No kidding.
And that's why they believe there's a lot of cruciate ligament problems for a lot of the dogs that are neutered and spayed at about like 6 months old. But one of the theories, and I don't know if it's true or not, but they were thinking that if they do pediatric spay or neuter, then that means that the dog is going to continue to develop without having this weird section where bones go a little bit longer. Right. One of my guys got neutered at about 1.5 years old. They're both from rescue, but one of them got neutered at about 1.5 years old, and the other one was neutered at 5 months old. Just the way they came into rescue, right? But my guy who came in at 1.5 years old and got neutered, he's got the bulky, thick neck, and he's my other guy is still kind of juvenile looking. Like just a little bit finer in his features. I'm sure he would have looked a little bit lunkier.
Blockier.
But it's not just about like when we get it done, but it definitely makes physical changes,
Well, and I would imagine that has something to do because if they're a little more fragile on the table and you're manipulating them or they're going through a growth spurt that they might be tender in areas that we're putting them in awkward spots and doing weird things to them. And so they're getting this bombardment on the outside, but also that interior is busting as well. So is that a good way? I'm trying to articulate that.
And we're trying to ask them to stand on something high while they're, balancing on 3 legs, and they're kind of looking at us like, I'm gonna fall, and sometimes they're at a point where their owners are finding them very frustrating. So we have to kind of think about that too. Like talking to our owners can solve so many problems. Just having a good rapport with owners, because like maybe this is like the last week that all they've heard is no, get out of that, leave it, no, off, no, stop leave it, and stop it, knock it off, and we get them and they're like, I've had it with people, and they're thrashing and they're
you're right.
They're like little toddlers who've been told no all day long and it's their first word, so
that's a really true good point. I didn't think about
I didn't think about that either.
Well, and if we talk to our owners about how things are going at home, then we can also get a better idea. They go through this phase where they're suddenly kind of like, I have some opinions. Like they didn't have opinions when they were puppies. They're like, I'm exploring the world and I'm forming opinions. Now they hit about 6 months old. At 6 months, a year, 1.5 years, and I used to have my customers write it on the calendar so they remember, like expect that kind of, what happens if I say no? It's like, and it's so normal. We can't vilify that, but just know to expect it. That it's so normal for them to do that. But sometimes owners are so frustrated. But if they've been working with them the whole time and they know that that's going to happen and they're prepared for it. I mean, really, modern dog training is so much about like teach them exactly what you want and reward the good behavior. There's really nothing to rebel against. So you don't get that rebellious burst as much as it's a, what happens if I don't? Oh, wait, yeah, that's right. But there's nothing wrong if I do. So,
Right.
Yeah. So what are some steps of intro?
So
Is there any advice you would give to say from step, let's just say, 2 weeks after, how would you set up this program in an ideal world, the perfect scenario, the perfect owner? Because we know it's not gonna, but what would be the ideal situation?
So you mean like if they come in with an adolescent dog that's never been groomed, like first
We could start with
contact?
that. Yep, we
Yeah.
could start with
Okay.
that, or start with we've been working with them. They've been coming frequently for every 2 weeks, or that's what I'm trying. Do you do the 2 weeks? Are
Okay.
you looking at 1 week? What's the transition? What should be the timeline?
So I know I have some thoughts on that. I don't know if Lori has something to throw in, but
Well, it's funny because I'm trying to
we were
think of
kind of
all
talking about it today. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have this Samoyed who's I want to say he's 13 months old, about, I believe so is what Dad said. And he's kind of hitting this awkward stage of stuff is scary, and the dryer is scary. And we've actually been having him come in every week to get him okay with grooming. And the parents are just, they're literally unicorn parents. They come in, they're like, I don't care what the price is. I just want my dog to be happy and well taken care of. And so Chrissy groomed him the first time, and he was just, everything scared him to death. It was just like, I can't handle it. So as we preach at work that, we never push. We always let them handle what they can, and when they can't, we'll add to it. And Chrissy groomed him. Then I saw him 4 Mondays in a row, and then Chrissy just groomed him again today. And we're able to get way more accomplished, and he's completely understanding. The parents just keep seeing the added reward and how the dog's behaving. Now the dog runs into the grooming salon and it's not trying to sneak back and run out the door. He comes back to say hello before he leaves, and I think
I got the dryer on his neck today.
Yeah, I really do think that having dogs who are going into these big transitions come in weekly to bi-weekly. And I try to offer it in the salon. Just come in and say hi. 5 minutes. Let me take your dog around the salon, go back. I don't charge for any of that, but I want them to know that this is a safe environment for them. And the reason I say I'm not going to charge is because I want them to come back. I want those, to me, I care more about how the animal feels than making a quick $5 because I have your dog on the table. I want to build that relationship with the dog, and it's so important. And these clients are doing it. The Samoyed dad and mom are there. I wish they could teach a class on how to be parents like us,
Well, and I think some of it goes back to talking to owners about how
Yes.
This is setting you up for success. We want you to be successful. And let me give you some examples. Like when we talk about, or when we strategically time it, so they're talking to someone who has done this with their own dog, who is now their dog is doing really well. But to backtrack, because the other thing that we can talk to owners about is that forcing them through a grooming, especially at this age, we can literally teach them to hate it.
Yeah.
And
how many times have we seen that
and
dealt
again
with it, and cases?
Yep. And even if they're coming in because they're matted, I mean, I know that we all wrestle with this. Like, okay, so now we have a matted coat and we need to get these mats off of you. But I'm gonna suggest out here, we also need to ask ourselves, do I need to get all of these mats off today? Like this dog is going to learn that they hate this. they might hurt themselves while we're doing it, because I mean, if they start flailing around, dogs don't have to wiggle very much for an accident to happen. You know, do we need to, they've been living with these mats for a while, do we really need to get it entirely done today? And what kind of solutions can we offer owners? Like, tell you what, I'll work with them for half an hour today and half an hour tomorrow and half an hour the day after, you know, and just make sure that we're charging for our time, because it's not free.
Right. Not that you're adding. That's
free.
Different than walking a dog around to say, hey.
Right.
You bring them in for a little bit of hellos and cookies, that's free, but no.
No, applying your knowledge to take care of the dog, that's a whole different story.
Yeah. But I think, you know, we tend to, as an industry, think I have to get these mats off this poor dog. And then, of course, he's going to need a bath and he's going to need all these other things. And sometimes we forget that we're creating problems down the line, you know. And Dara, I don't know if you heard us talking last week, but I usually tell people, like, think about 15 years, which right now is 2037. Like, do you want your dog to be a problem for grooming and deal with this problem every time, every 2 months or so till 2037? And the owners are like, no. How do we fix it? You know?
Right.
That's a good idea too, is putting that number out there, because you don't think about that number.
Right? I mean, that's future. That doesn't even make sense.
Wow.
2037.
Right? Yeah. And by the way, would you like to schedule your grooming appointment?
Yeah. Right. One of the things that I started from the classes I was taking, I kind of upped my questionings with the parents, and I explained to them the reason why we're not forcing your dog to do anything they don't like is because this is not just, you know, a one time and then we're done. We're creating a relationship, and an average dog gets anywhere between 30 to, what was it, Chrissy? I can't remember, 30 to 300 grooms.
I didn't look it up, but I have
their lifespan. Yeah, and that's one of the stuff you said in your class.
You can kind of do the math right now.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. I mathed it out, and it's anywhere between that dog is being groomed anywhere between 2 weeks and 3 months of its lifetime.
Yeah,
for like a work
90
week.
to 300 times.
Yeah,
and
if I told you to start off, like, let's spend the first day teaching them to be good for it, everyone would be like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, right. Versus fighting with them, you know, and then you have 15 years, and then we can add that number, 2037, you know, what?
Right.
Well, isn't that why there's kindergarten?
Yeah.
First
right.
one, you know, preschool, kindergarten, and grade 1. You're not going to have your kindergarten child be able to handle a full day as a first grader and sit through class where they can barely sit through class themselves. So you've got to have that progression. Sydney said she's seen a lot of dogs regress instead of progress forward.
But sometimes that's the adolescent burst.
That's the
sometimes what you're seeing with that, and that's a great point, Sydney, is sometimes what you're seeing is like, oh, I've been working with them and everything's going great. And then groomers are like, what happened? I've been working with this dog and now he's goes crazy. But sometimes it's they're reaching that other growth spurt, and they've had it. They're totally impatient. They're hormonal in who knows which way, because we really can't communicate with them. How do you feel? You know, but and it's so common, because I have people contact me for training stuff at that age, and they're like, what is happening? What happened to my dog? You know, so sometimes it's not regressing as much as we need to remember that we still kind of need to treat them like puppies.
Right. And then Groomer Jen,
can I show this? Because this is it's a big, there we go. That way all our viewers can read that themselves.
So
we'll come back to that, Sydney. Give us just 1 second.
So what I normally do is I go up right to the receptionist. If there's a dog that I am working with and I'm making progress, I let them know, hey, when this dog rebooks, please rebook it with me until we can get him acclimated to the grooming. And then if they want to go on their way, they don't want me as a request, no big deal. But I always went up to the receptionist and let them know. Same with the owners. And an owner of a salon and a receptionist shouldn't even bat an eye, because you're making progress and you're making the salon look good, with the progress you're making with this dog.
Yeah. And also, if you do really good note taking,
yes,
like you might have a coworker who can pick up exactly where you left off.
Exactly.
In some respects, it's kind of good to have them meet other groomers in the room, even if you're their primary groomer, right? And then there are other times where it's like, okay, no matter what happens, please don't give them to that groomer because they don't enjoy adolescent dogs, and it's not going to be fun for anybody.
Right. Yeah, that
know your limitations too.
That is a really, really good point, because I know from personal experiences what I like and don't. And if you don't have the patience, you shouldn't be, I don't think you should be working with certain types. I mean, do what you're good at doing. And if
you don't have the patience today, maybe you're just having a really off day. And it's like, I don't have the patience for this dog today.
Right.
Tell somebody.
Start right in the morning. Say, hey, listen, I need to pass this off because I know I'm not okay right now, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're going to do, a worse time when you're grooming. It's not that we're questioning your grooming. It's that today's not like dogs. We all have bad days. And one of the biggest thing on being a manager, so if you're ever looking to be a manager of a grooming salon, is learning how each of your coworkers work and who likes certain type of dogs. Like I look at everyone, I'm like, oh, she is great with puppies. All the puppies go there. I know so-and-so can't handle puppies, but she's good with older dogs, and vice versa. And seeing things that are booked and moving it around to make sure that the flow is just as calm as possible. And don't book these dog that someone can't handle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And don't put dogs on schedules that might require 2 people.
Right, when there's not available.
Yeah. And also, be thinking about, like Mindy mentions here, that some dogs just conflict with another person's personality.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're not gonna, I like to think I get along with every dog, but there's gonna be one that I'm like, I just not feeling it.
Right.
And somebody else thinks he's the best in the world. So let's just go with the person who thinks he's awesome.
What about people who don't get along with the owner of the dog?
Okay, I have some opinions on this one because I see this one a lot.
All right, first answer Sydney's question. She's asked, she said, so does that change and they go back to being okay again?
You know what? If you are really patient with them and treating them like they're a puppy again, and you're like, okay, listen, you're being really, really kind of cuckoo, like, can you just calm down again? Let me give you a bunch of breaks. I need to get the clippers over your body, yeah, it does. It does change back again because we have to be thinking, what is he learning today? Is he learning that this is safe? Is he learning that he can trust me? Or is he learning that, nope, you're old enough now, hold the leg down and get the clippers, like that. What is he learning? And a lot of them just bounce right back.
Right.
Yeah.
I've noticed they've gone back.
Slow and steady.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we're upset with the owners, so a classic example, right? Dog comes in and you've talked to these people over and over again, and the dog comes in and he's matted and they're using they want him to have 20 inches of coat and they have him in a harness and you're like fed up, right? Like, oh, we put him in a harness and we've been brushing him with a boar bristle brush every night, or a whisk,
rubber curry.
and I've got a whisk for him in the snow, right? That we have to kind of step back and go, okay, but I can't take it out on this dog. And sometimes it's really hard because you're looking and you're like, oh my God, you're like, someday my eye's going to get stuck into full eye roll, but you need to just like, oh, okay, all right, but I can't take it out on this dog, and then
that
just
really affects these adolescents.
Yes, it sure does.
There is that tension passed from the minute you take that dog in their hands and put it on your table, that energy just follows.
They're like adolescent humans. They're there just to argue.
Right, right.
You know, like,
Which is
they're like, don't you touch my foot. That's my foot. Like,
which
oh,
is a
baby.
big point that I was going to say, Dara, is that that you have to separate it. You know, just know that that's how the client's going to be. It is what it is, but you have to separate it. And the second you say bye to the client, you let that go, because that dog cannot feel any sorts of stress or irritability with you once you take over that leash.
Yeah. And if it's an owner that is really bothering you that much, like they just keep bringing this dog in terrible condition or something, like, I don't think I'm your groomer.
Yeah.
You know, I'll fire an owner. I'll work with a dog forever. But I'll fire a customer, you know, like, nope, I'm not your groomer, you know, because if you're not taking good care of your dog, owners have responsibilities, and it's okay for us to remind them. You know, like, you need to bring him in more often. This isn't fair to him. Let me tell you why. Let me show you again. Let me, you know, make sure you have the right brush and the right products, and that you're, you know, that you're not actually fighting with him at home when you try to brush him, you know, and be there to help them. But if they don't want to, you know.
Well, a good thing that's been, well, I was gonna say, a good thing that's been taken off is a lot of clients are realizing, hey, why don't you come in for an hour and I'll help you? Because my goal is for you to be able to do this at home. So if you have any questions, come in. I will love to spend the time to help you how to do this the correct way. And it's actually, a lot of people are willing to do that. I'm having a lot more clients. Well, can you just show me? I'm not going to groom my dog. They don't want to groom it, but they just want to know how to brush it so they can at least take care of what they can at home. You know, and then I have the people, oh no, that's too much. I want to come in sooner. I want every 3 weeks, you know, or you have the people who are just going on and they're doing a great job, that if it takes 8 weeks for you to see that dog is pretty darn good.
Yeah. Have a good flight, Mindy.
Yes, have a good flight.
Coming back from Atlanta Pet Fair.
Yeah, I heard that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think the adolescent dogs too, they go through like a couple of phases that if you know ahead of time, and you have it in your head that he's no longer the gentle puppy, right? Like, the adolescent is really different. And if you have it in your head, like, yeah, I should be expecting frustration, because they're frustrated. They're like, I want to go off and play, and you're making me stand up, and standing up is uncomfortable. They're fidgety, they're awkward, they're clumsy, you know, and we kind of have to remember that, you know.
We got to remember a lot.
We do.
Yeah, we do. God, I have a book of telling me what I have to remember.
Overload.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Sydney wrote something here. What did she say?
Yeah. Private.
About having private salons charging more to teach the owners instead of educating. So education is always first for me. I would like to educate, but I also charge my time. If it takes me more, then, you know, I'm going to charge accordingly. But the education is important, because some people just, hey, whatever, here's the money, and they won't bat an eye. Some people might freak out over $2 increase, you know, but if there's no education behind it, they're not learning. You either have a disgruntled person or someone who just doesn't quite understand, but just accepted it.
Sometimes you end up with someone who's like, oh, so he's X amount of dollars and X amount of fidgeting. Great. I'll just write you a check.
Exactly.
And they're always the check people, aren't they? But
that is true. Right? You're so right.
Like, they're counting out their ones, you know, but that sometimes they're just like, oh, good, I just pay the extra. And they think they're buying a haircut, like it's in a box, and a can upgrade of the, you know, and he's wiggly. So it doesn't necessarily teach them anything. But if you start talking to them about, well, I mean, the walk-in nail trim that we're talking about takes 2 minutes, and your dog takes 10 minutes and 2 people.
Right.
So therefore, we are charging you differently, but we want to get him to the point where he's the 2-minute nail trim. So let's talk to you about how we can make that happen. And I think that most owners are really into their dogs.
Yes.
So if we spend time telling them, like, I think he's a great little guy, actually, that's usually where I start off with people. Oh my God, he's so cute. He's a great little guy. Let me tell you how we can help him be the best dog he can be, because he's going to need this his whole life. And we're just kind of trying to guide them so that they realize, like, oh, you're not saying that he's just bad, like, because that's what happens if you just add a fee.
Yeah.
So my veterinarian has people bring their dogs in for like hellos and cookies, and my dogs love the veterinarian.
Mine do too.
Yeah, mine doesn't.
Yep.
Mine goes like right in as excited.
He's like littles.
Yeah,
and they love that because they get the attention and the shots all at the same time.
Yeah, mine gets
when
right
I used
on
to
the
be
floor.
When I used to be a tech, we used to have people come in like, yeah, just come on in, cookies and a visit, especially after something like a spay or a neuter or some sort of an injury. Like, come on in, cookies and a visit, maybe put them on the scale, get a weight, and just out you go again. And it really works,
Yeah. I had a thought and now I can't remember what it was. I was like, oh, this is good. Now I can't remember it.
Yeah, no, that's the story of me.
It was, I know what it was. It's our sedate dog, Chrissy, the nail trim that they always had to sedate him for his nails at the vet. And you and I worked a year to get him, and the peanut butter and one pot.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, I remember which one. Yeah, he's like,
he's great now.
Butter.
He's great now. He comes right in. He's like, I love this.
Yeah, he still comes in and he's great. I have the spoonful ready of peanut butter. I do it right out. Yeah.
Oh, good. And then I can describe what that process is if anybody's wondering.
Yes.
Can I have a couple minutes to describe that process?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I think sometimes people are like, oh, good, I'll distract him with peanut butter. But we don't want to just add peanut butter and distract, because dogs don't like being tricked. They're still going to be suspicious and nervous. But if instead you're using it as pairing it with like nail trimming means peanut butter. And when nail trimming goes away, and the peanut butter went away too. Nail trimming, peanut butter. Peanut. And it's almost like this in out dance, right? But
that's what we did.
But it creates what we call a conditioned emotional response, where they start seeing the nail trimmer as the predictor of peanut butter. Sort of like we don't teach our dogs about cheese wrappers. They're like, cheese wrapper? Sometimes that means cheese, right? We don't teach our dogs about our car keys. They're like, ride? Like that. So if it's a conditioned emotional response, and sometimes we can create a positive conditioned emotional response with something that they used to think was scary. But you got to go slow, and you got to be thinking about every step of the way that this dog is supposed to be having a fairly good experience with it. And it can't just be a distraction. It can't be like, snip, ha, 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 got it. It's got to be, but it can definitely turn them around. Yeah, and it's not just a distraction. Like, hey, dude, this toe, are you ready? And they're still listening, and they're still feeling that they're licking at something that they really like.
I can remember his head and his eyeball. He was like,
are you serious?
Peanut butter, but you're on my feet. And
there's another dog. There's a Jack Russell. And Dara, you know who I'm talking about. This Jack Russell who comes in with a gentleman from time to time. And can I tell you that we found his way. We like to hold him nice and tight, and we can drummel his nails now. Before we couldn't even touch his nails, and he was one of those dogs that he comes in and you have to make sure you're like, oh my God, that dog's in again. Okay, I'm relaxed. Let's get this done. And we've worked with him, and we've done a lot of, Chrissy and I have worked with him to the point where we can get the drummel on a dog who we couldn't even barely clip his nails.
He couldn't. He turned into little Cujo.
Oh, I think it was worse than Cujo.
Yeah. I think he drew blood on quite a few of us.
Well, and I think too, so we talk about a conditioned emotional response, right? Like that cheese wrapper response. But some dogs see a nail clipper and automatically think fight. And that's a conditioned emotional response too. That inanimate object has been paired with having a very terrible time. And sometimes we accidentally do that. So if we're gonna flip the script and help them feel good about it, we also have to say, I'm not gonna let you get stressed, even if there's just one more nail. Oh, it's so hard to do.
Yeah,
it's so hard to do.
When
you're like, just one more.
And you're like,
you gotta kind of go, this dog can't do that. I can do that with the average dog, and I'll be able to do that with this dog someday. But right now, I'm just trying to teach this dog that like nail trimming means happy time, And
since I've been doing that, and I've been letting dogs go without nails, and I have them come back in like 2 to 3 days, what a difference. And the happiness, and it's so easy to have that turnaround. It's kind of one of those things. I'm like, I wish I wasn't stubborn and just did that one last nails, like we were trying to, 16 years back, you're like, just get it done. And now that you work with the animals and you understand their body language, it's great. I love the adolescent dogs. I love seeing their changes.
I think the adolescent dogs are a lot of fun, but I don't mind taking breaks and like switching to do something else, which is kind of what we were talking about with the puppies too, like just make sure they're having a good time. But I think especially with those adolescents, we're like, well, now he's big and I need to get my clipper work done all the way down his rib cage, but you need to do it all right now. Like you're doing a full groom on a dog, you have lots of chances to circle around. It doesn't mean that you have to take him off the table and give him a full break, but you might. But even if it's like, okay, I'm going to work a little bit around your neck because that makes you scared. And then we're going to work on your hip again that you don't care about, and back to the neck, and then back to your tail, and then back to your neck, and then back to a foot, and working back and forth. And I think many of us as groomers were taught like, have a system and it's very efficient and you do your efficient system.
Yeah.
But some of our dogs can't match that yet.
Right.
It is efficient, definitely efficient. There are days where I'm like, oh, so awesome. I can just do my thing and do this nice, efficient grooming. But a lot of our dogs can't handle it. So if we remember, like, it's about what he's learning.
And we right now have a very adolescent
clientele.
Group. Yeah. I think because of coming out of this pandemic again. I mean, it is there and it's there to stay. So I don't know what the puppy situation, because I'm not there like you guys, but are you seeing an influx of puppies still, or has that toned down a bit?
I think that toned for me. I think more. We've been seeing, it's been kind of in the middle. I'm seeing a lot of adolescent dogs now, but then I would say the last month, all of a sudden, everyone has puppies again. So I want to say, I think we're still in the puppy. And everyone's getting puppies. I've had at least 4 new puppies just today.
Huh, wow.
Yeah, there were a bunch of puppies today.
Yeah. We had a puppy who was 6 months old who's never been groomed, and then I had an 11-week-old, and then it was like a almost a year old who's never seen a groomer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they're still there and still coming.
Yeah, still coming.
Yeah. And we want them to have a good time, because I like grooming a dog through its whole lifetime. Yeah, I love having that customer relationship. Some of my house call customers, I'm on a different generation of dogs with them. Yeah. Like those puppies have lived out their lives, and they've got new puppies because those old guys have passed away. And I mean, if we spend the time in the beginning, and also being that hub of information for the owner, like, hey, let me tell you how we can help him enjoy a nail trim. And they're like, enjoy? I'm like, for a lot of them, you can get them to that point. Yeah. And even if they're good, I think we should be trying to teach them to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think sometimes groomers see it as, oh, is he giving me a hard time, or am I able to get the job done? But we really want the dog to feel okay, not just, can I get my job done? Like, is he disruptive?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I guess we kind of covered everything.
Yeah, we
got any part?
Well, I can tell you as one story about adolescent dogs from my own experience with my own dog. My last border collie was like the sweet, gentle, quiet little Disney princess of border collies. And she hit 1 year old. Oh my God. She hit a year old and went through this adolescent burst. And I was like, wow, even you, right? Like it was on time. It was everything I expected, especially, like I said, like 6 months a year and a half to, like think about those every 6 month marks. I remember I was working as a vet tech and she was in a cage in one of our kennels because we used to do some boarding. I'm feeding the dogs and they're all barking. And I looked at her and said, Isa, hush. And she looked at me and went up to the front of the crate and went, rah, 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 rah. I'm like, are you kidding me? I opened the crate door and put her in a down stay in the middle of the room. And she's like, oh no, what have I done? What have I done? Yeah. But every once in a while, she even the sweetest, like, I always follow mom's instructions. Why wouldn't I? Kind of dog was like, no, I have some opinions. And it's so normal. It's just, it's just so normal. If you know ahead of time to expect it and give your owners a heads up, especially with those little puppies, like, hey, in another couple of months, he's going to start having some opinions, Yep. Yeah, my husband was shocked that Isa had ever done such a thing.
Yeah. Well, it's good to let the owners know. The more they know, they can, I have a woman who's she has a good time with her puppy. And then exactly like you said, 6 months happens. She's like, oh God, I can't handle it. Oh no, my dog's good again. Then a year happens and then the 18 months. And now that I've introduced that to I do it my puppy speech, people, oh yeah, you're right. We're hitting the 12 mark, the 18 mark. And just like your story, I have a border collie mix who, when she was 1.5, I questioned whether I could be a border collie mom. I got to the point where I'm like, this dog, and I did all my research. The reason I got her was because she was my farm dog. She was trained to grab the horses when they escaped to bring them back. That was her job. And I'm like, I don't know if I can handle this, and we pushed on through. I worked with my trainer who I was well aware. And, she's 16 now. She's a perfect little love, but those happen. And I always say there's light there.
Well, and if you know ahead of time that it's going to happen, you're not thinking like, what was the number for rescue?
Right. Like, let nature take care of them, I guess. Right.
Yeah. Oh, so another thing that happens during adolescence that I'm going to add is that at about a year old, dogs go through a second chewing phase. Their permanent teeth are setting in their jaw. And so either at that point, we have already taught them to not chew on inappropriate things, or they go through, another bout of chewing, but I also kind of wonder if sometimes their mouth is sore during that process, but they're chewing on stuff. They go through another chewing phase. Ideally, we should be encouraging chewing with dogs anyway. Like, here are some great things for you to chew on, because for a dog to sit down and chew on something is sort of like when I sit down and knit or play Sudoku, like it's this individual thing. They're spending some time working on a project, we can't make them have jobs, but yeah, they do go through another phase, and most of us don't notice it because our dogs are already chewing appropriate things or have been a crazy chewer destroying everything anyway. So
that is one thing I've been lucky. Well, I shouldn't say lucky, because Ellie does like to chew things when she gets stressed, when I'm gone or I leave or there's just tension, and she will chew whatever I have been touching. And she'll just destroy it. It'll be like just everywhere. Books, phones, remotes, like candles.
So it's gonna sound gross, but pick up one of her dog toys and breathe all over it.
Really?
Breathe all over it and stuff. Like, look, this smells like me.
Yeah. Okay.
If you can get some foot stink on it, she'd think it was great.
Yeah.
But like, just like get it all over you, shove it in your shoes, whatever you're gonna do. But like, here's your toy, and it smells like your favorite people. And for some animals, that can be really helpful. Like, okay, I just needed to feel closer to you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you this.
Sorts of crazy.
Going back to the grooming with a dog who is going through the second bout of chewing, that could also mean some issues when you're trying to groom the face.
Yeah,
And
I think it's
so
probably sore.
it's important for not only the owners, but also the groomers to really pay attention on their age, because that can change the whole grooming experience. You know, if you have a dog's mouth who's sore and you're there trying to hold his chin and holding the snout to get around the eyes, and their dog's like, whoa, 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 lady, I'm in pain. This hurts. Now I'm upset, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. With a dog that's at an age that they're easily frustrated, and we keep whacking their tooth with a comb.
Right, right.
Yeah. I think in general, you know, the more we think about it, like, okay, how can we help this dog have a better time? And what age is he at? And what stage is he at?
You know, I think I'm going to have that as a poster board up in the lobby. Your ages and the different developmental stages, so people can be aware of. I think that's a great idea. I'm going to work on that. Yeah. I'm excited.
Okay.
Welcome to your exciting adolescent dog.
Right.
I'm going to walk into the shop and be like, what happened?
Oh, yeah. You're in for a surprise.
So Groomer Jen said something about there was an adolescent nail trim conditioning, and that's what you guys were working with. So Jen, was it that you were trying to make a positive conditioned emotional response? Is that what you were working on with that? Or just curious how it went? But just curious. Well, because if she's still watching, if she's still there. Yeah, I think that there's just a lot of stuff going on all at the same time. And it's really easy for us as groomers to think that, like, no, it's really time to start getting an adult haircut. Mm-hmm. And some of them will let us. So I think that the couple that have a lot of problems with it, we start thinking must be, you know, broken. You know, puppies that got screwed up. If only they had, you know, like, who did this dog last time? They said they went someplace else. Stop throwing each other under the bus. That puppy might have been very different 2 months ago, you know?
Right.
And you know, even if they want to do every 8 weeks, it's not right for a puppy. We need them in more often than that, because they need to learn about it. And puppy and adolescent, you know.
And what's the one thing they say, that a dog that comes to the shop or an animal that's groomed frequently, it becomes part of their life. Whereas an animal that's done once or twice a year, it's a jail sentence to them.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not part of their life.
It's
so
like
if it's you got to make it a part of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and also if we teach them to be good for grooming, they're going to be better for their owners. If their owners need to do stuff, they're going to be better for their vet when their vet needs to do stuff. My customers are always telling me that, like, they bring their dog to the vet and they're like, he's so patient and he's so good. And they're like, my groomer's been working with him to make him feel comfortable with all this stuff. You know, a lot of the time vets can't properly diagnose something like a limp because the dog is, like, so afraid of being at the vet that they just are stiffened up and tense. They're not going to show a limp. They're terrified, you know, whereas the dogs that we groom, they're doing full range of motion. They're like, oh, that one goes out. This one's a little sore, you know, and they're like fine for it.
Yeah. Or they're so nervous that their adrenaline's pumped up and they don't,
and then all of a sudden
feel that they're hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, I don't feel anything.
Nothing here.
That happened to my first dog. You know, we took him to the vet because he was dragging his leg. And I'll never forget the dog's name, Lucky. And then we went to the vet and all of a sudden the dog's walking fine. And I just paid the vet visit for nothing because he's like, well, I don't see anything. And then I leave and he's like dragging that foot again and like exhausted. And I'm just like, it's not good.
Okay, but I think anyone who's played sports can relate to that. You know, like, oh yeah, I get in armor, I get out on the field, I'm like, guess that shoulder's feeling great. Let's have a good time. Yeah, idiot. It was not feeling great. It's going to hurt later. It's going to hurt a lot.
True story. Okay. Well, we are right at 1 hour.
Yeah.
Any parting words?
So Jen says that it was the Frenchie she used to trim, went someplace else, and now can't touch her front feet or give her an affectionate hug. Oh, that's stuff that you can get past. And yeah.
Back
but that's and that's definitely like training. I know a lot of the time groomers think that trainers can't do grooming stuff, but it really depends on what kind of trainer you go to. And you can always hit me up for questions. Can help you with that.
Yeah. All right. So next week we talk about adults.
Yeah. Yes. Everyone's going to think, oh, that's easy.
We're going to have to bring it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
We're going to have to bring it. So it's the ever-changing adults.
I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
Always forming opinions and new opinions at that.
Yep.
That is true. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us this evening, and we will be back on for the ever-changing adults next week.
Yes. Thank you so much.
And have a great night.